Diocese of Fall River. I'm pleased to be joined with two individuals here today, Benny Costa-Reedy, and Pat Colbert. Benny and Pat, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Very well, thank you.
Well, thank you both for joining me today for a conversation around how do we handle challenges, specifically geared towards those who work in parish leadership and in parish catechesis. It's no surprise that the past year and a half has been complicated. That might be a nice word to put it. And even though restrictions for churches were lifted last May, and we were able to fortunately return to a lot of in-person liturgies and catechetical programs this past fall, we again find ourselves in an interesting point in time this January with, again, renewed concerns for safety, especially around COVID and new variants, that have, I think, left a lot of parishes with certain questions of what do we do or how do we handle the current situation. So I appreciate you both being here for this conversation where we'll talk about certainly the current moment that we find ourselves in, but also I think talk about just challenges in general, because while we find ourselves right now in the midst of a specific challenge of a rise in the Omicron variant, we will always be facing some challenge, health related or not, in our parishes. So this could be a helpful conversation to that end. Before we go any further, I'm just going to ask if you want to share your role in your parish and a little bit about what you do, and we can start with you, Benny.
Hi, my name is Benny Costa-Reedy. I am the Director of Faith Life for St. Mary's Parish in Dartmouth, Massachusetts. And my role as a parish leader is what the title says, Faith Life. I help every member of the parish from their birth to their end of life with their faith and their faith journey.
Wonderful. So what are some examples of that you oversee?
So, for example, our children, a religious ed catechesis faith formation program, our youth ministry, working with our youth minister, and with our high school and our middle school ministry, families with baptism prep, adults within the community, whether they are families working with parents and how to teach the faith and share the faith mostly with their own children. And I like working with the grandparents. I love my seniors because they have a world of wisdom to share with us about their faith journey, just their life story, and how their faith has impacted their life through the good and the difficult. It's priceless. It's priceless. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Benny. And yourself, Pat.
Yes, my name is Pat Colbert. I work at St. Mary's in Mansfield, and I'm the Faith Formation Director for grades 1 through 8. So we have always offered a homeschool program. So we have both a homeschool program that Maureen Bonapane, who is the coordinator, does that for grades 3 through 8. And we offer in-person classes for grades 1 through 8. Which I primarily am responsible for because Maureen does the homeschool. So we give parents an option, which we have found very helpful. They like to have choices. And this year, interesting, we typically have about 30% of our program in homeschool. This year it went up to around 8%, because I think the Delta at that time was the big variant coming out in August and parents were concerned. But our in-person classes were going really, really well up until Christmas break. And this, probably jumping ahead, but we canceled classes for a week and a half. We're starting up after Martin Luther King, the holiday.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing for that, Pat. To that end, and you're already kind of alluding to it, Pat, there's been some challenges as of late. Before we kind of go into naming those challenges, can you both share a little bit about really whatever challenge we face, faith has to come first. And I think that's the underlying thing we always have to remember as catechetical leaders and as church ministers is we have one mission. and that's to help individuals know the goodness of Jesus Christ and to invite him into the fullness of life in the church. That doesn't stop. And we saw so many examples of that during the original shutdown through the past year and a half. Is how we get there changes with challenges. We always have to remember that that first mission does it. So can, maybe we'll keep the same order. If Ben, you want to share, and then Pat, a little bit of how have you maintained your faith during this time, and how do you invite families to maintain their faith during these challenging times?
I guess for myself, prayer is a part of it. And I can't say that I'm one of those people that does traditional prayer. My prayer is an all-day thing. I get up in the morning, I start with a prayer, just thanking God for the day, and I pray throughout the day for everything I do. At night, I do like to say my rosary, and for me, that's a comfort. I have a special place for the Blessed Mother, not only as a woman, but as a mother, and as a leader in our church, which sometimes people don't remember. That in her raising Jesus from a young boy into a man, she did instill in him what it means to be part of a family and what it means to be a person of faith. I know that sometimes people forget that even though he was divine, he was human. And so she has a special place. And so I often think of her. Another thing for me is the fact that I am working at a parish. I can sometimes just pop and sit for a minute or so. We have a chapel in our office, and I do use it every once in a while, especially when things get a little hairy, to go in there and sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament and say, now what? And just appreciating the fact that we're healthy, and that we've made it through, even though we've had a few scares. We've stayed healthy, and that's how I keep my faith going. I love to read all kinds of books, books of the saints, or just books about what's going on in the church today, and some of the difficulties and the challenges that we're facing as Catholics in the world, because it is a challenge. We are being challenged. So that's how I keep my faith going.
Thank you, Benny. Yourself, Pat.
Yes. Like Benny said, prayer for me is not so much saying the Hail Mary, the Our Father. It's like waking up in the morning and saying, thank you. I feel so good. I feel healthy. And then it's typically just walking from my car to my office. Like when it's a beautiful day, I always look up and I'm like, thank you. What a beautiful day. It's so simple. Like just being able to say thank you for everything and being grateful for what you have. And I hope I instill that with people that I see, that I show that I'm grateful for everything I have, whatever I can give to anybody. And obviously going to church is I just love going to Mass. It is my most peaceful time ever. Just being there, knowing that, I'm loved, and getting direction. In terms of, so I think that's for me, keeping my faith. And like Benny said, I've been reading the Bible more. I have in my house a thinking chair, so I sit and think and I read, and that's like my time to just be by myself with my thoughts, with, God. And I find that I've been doing that more during the pandemic than I have. So that's a good thing. There's so many good things that have come out. In terms of my faith, I also feel like I want to show my faith by my action. And I'm involved in the community. I'm involved in a committee in town that I love, and I love all the people. It's Keep Mansfield Beautiful. We do cleanups. We do, flower barrels downtown, and I'm involved in that. And that, for me, is a way I can show my faith to others, like giving back.
Wonderful.
So, sort of simple, but
yeah. I think
that's me.
I think it just simply underscores for anyone, whether you're a leader or your family, what are you doing for your faith right now? Obviously, the importance of Mass as first and foremost, and being part of the community. But, when we hit challenges or crisis, the temptation might be to put prayer, faith, the liturgy on the back burner, and really anything we lead with in making decisions that affect other people in our community needs to start with prayer. So on that point, and Pat, you started to allude to this, what have been some of the challenges you have both seen in your parishes over the past few weeks? And how have you responded to those challenges? So we'll start again with Julie.
I guess at this time, the challenges in the town of Dartmouth is that we are pretty high there in the state in COVID cases. Our schools are attendance is really low, and it's primarily the children in the school that are bringing it home, not through any fault of their own, but just because they're out there and they're being exposed. So one of the things we've done is we've shut down for 2 weeks just to give parents, that time to do what they need to do to keep their families healthy. And the other thing is to watch out for our parish as a whole. A lot of our families have not returned for varying reasons, and what we need to do is to continuously reach out to them, and so that's been a challenge. One of the things that we've done at St. Mary's is we've just we have a new person, not a new person, but a new role of a member care. Excuse me, and this staff member is that's what she's going to do. Member care, reaching out, being there, being the contact person, just for families when they're struggling with difficult times. And I think that's going to be a great outreach point for us to reach families during this time where they feel disconnected or they feel afraid. Most people are afraid to go out and be in public. But if we stay connected to them, I think it'll be helpful for them. So that's been our greatest challenge right now, is this season that we're going through of another resurgence.
Sure. What about yourself, Pat?
Yeah, I'd have to say the beginning of the year for me was very challenging, getting the in-person classes back up and running. And I think some of that had to do with me. I was so worried about, one of the catechists getting sick or the students. And then, like I didn't want it on my watch. I just, I want everybody safe. I don't want to feel so concerned about that. But surprisingly, the classes were amazing. I mean, seriously amazing. The classes were smaller because we had more students enrolled in the homeschool program. We did limit our class size to no more than 9. So we have classes varying from, 5 students up to 9. And honestly, the catechists are I can't even describe how fabulous they are. The fact that they would teach during a pandemic is just amazing to me. And I just am so grateful every day for them. And they want to be here. And I guess I'll share a story with one catechist that, he's a friend of mine. I asked him to come back. He's been teaching for a couple of years. And of course, he said yes. And he said this is his best year ever. He said, because the classes are smaller, which shows it definitely helps. And he's so engaged with his class. And he says, I look forward to coming to this class every single week. And I find the students who did sign up for the in-person classes, they're coming in smiling, they're leaving happy. So I thought that was going to be a challenge, but it wasn't. What I found when we came back from vacation last week, we had classes. We had classes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Monday night, you'd never know the numbers were so high. Tuesday night, few less students came. It was Wednesday when I knew in my heart we had to close because less students, but it was the parents' reaction when they came in. They looked panic-stricken and just like, I should say both, panicked and just worn out. And I went home that night and I could just tell that something had to change. And that's when we decided the next day. And when I had other catechists call up, parents call up saying my children have COVID, we said we have to close down. And so that was, it was the right choice. And I've heard from parents and the catechists, thank you. That's what you needed. You needed that week and a half off. Some it's 2 weeks because of the holiday. So the next challenge will be coming back and seeing what happens. So for what I've done is I've reached out to the teachers saying, are you comfortable coming back? Please feel that you can tell me this because I need to know. And if they're not, I mean, we also have amazing subs. Again, I can't even describe it. And we're very fortunate. We have retired school teachers, we have nurses, we just have such a wide range of people. So far, they've all told me they're comfortable coming back, which is wonderful. So we'll see what happens next Tuesday when we're back. In terms of staying connected with families, at the beginning of classes, I said to them back in September, just let me know if someone's sick or, you have COVID or exposed or whatever. They've been phenomenal, either calling or emailing saying, can't come. What do you recommend? I'm like, stay home, stay home, get well. We will just make up the chapter. And just when you come back, show me the work and I'll mark you as present. That has worked really well. It's just and it gives, again, parents, they're not like, oh my gosh, am I going to not graduate next year? Can't, whatever. I'm like, no, you can do the work on your own. Don't worry about it. And for families that can't do that work at home because it's just so difficult, what we, depending on the situation, you would obviously waive some of it. And then if it's a lot of absences or even in the homeschool that they couldn't do it, we offer tutoring over the summer. And we did that last summer. And that again worked out well because it's one-on-one. They develop a relationship with the teacher. They feel comfortable coming in here, which I think is a big thing. They feel very welcomed. So that was, I think, a success. And we'll continue to offer that. The tutoring. And again, it all depends. It's because of the amazing catechists we have. I mean, it's them. They're the ones that drive this program. So we've been very lucky.
Yeah, it certainly is a balancing act on a couple ends because ultimately faith is a lived experience, right? Not a matter of checking boxes. And we have to be mindful of that. And we have to remind families of that it's not always just getting through content, quote unquote. It's encountering a person, a divine person, Jesus Christ. And that also, I think, gives pause to that we should always be considering. It's usually in these moments that we are pivot to something else, another form of delivering formation, for lack of a better phrase. It should also give us a moment to start considering what are the manners in which we are delivering that formation, and do they facilitate encounter, or are they just, sending a message, even if the intention is not that, sending a message of making it through material. Obviously, changing something in the middle of this is not the time frame for it. And there's certainly more practical decisions that we have to make, such as, do I have enough staffing to appropriately cover classes, volunteers, catechists, to maintain a safe environment? We certainly are concerned of children being ill. When you don't have enough adults and they're ill, they have their own families, that might make a decision right there. So can you talk a little bit about when you did make the decisions, or when you do make decisions when you're faced with a challenge? What's some of your process? Who might be some of the individuals you turn to or ensure to make sure they're part of that decision-making process? And then how do you communicate that decision out?
So at St. Mary's, we actually went through a similar process like the one you're speaking of. Prior to the pandemic, we had started working on what was going to be a change to come in a year. And the pandemic fast forwarded everything for us. We had, as a leadership team, started to work on moving from what is known as a traditional classroom setting where children come. There's a classroom, there's a resource such as a book or a guide. We decided to move to a more open model, and that is by not having a classroom, but a small group format, similar to what Mary's talking about, with just the dynamic of smaller groups with less people in their catechists. So we have a church model where the primary source of all catechesis is Mass. Mass is the base. Every child is, and every family is asked to live the Mass on a weekly basis, either in person if they feel safe, or online. All our Masses are online, and we have a connected site at every Mass that children can communicate with me live through the Mass. So they go into our site, they log on, and Miss Benny is there during the Mass to welcome them and to answer any questions they might have that might come up during the Mass. And trust me, children have a lot of questions, and that is a great time to answer them when they're there watching, listening, to answer those faith questions. We have one Mass where we, right after the Mass, our pastor, Father David, and Deacon Frank actually do a Q&A after the Mass live with those children who are in person. And the ones who are at home, text me on our chat site. They send me their questions, and we do a chat live in person. The kids have loved it. And again, it's covering the gospel for the day and any questions the children may have. Our middle schoolers, we have gone back to in person with them, but small groups, no group larger than 9 or 10, with, as Mary said, these amazing volunteers that come in to give their time to work with these kids. And small groups is what we've done through the entire parish. Middle school, high school, and all our adults have got small groups going. And that was a big change for us. People weren't used to hearing, all we want you to do is go to Mass. Well, how do they prepare? How are they going to be able to receive this? Yep, all you have to do is go to Mass. They will be prepared. We did decide that with our sacramental prep, for especially our First Communion children, it's a family program. We assist families in preparing children themselves. We give them resources. We use a video resource with questions for the family to make sure the children are understanding. And on the confirmation end, we've also made some changes as far as preparing for the sacrament, where once they're in a small group, then they will discern if they're ready for confirmation, and then they go onto a confirmation track. So a lot of change, and it all. But the first change was just to shut the program down for a year. When we started to go into lockdown, we closed everything. The only thing we put on the parents was go to Mass, either live or in person. That's all you have to do. Because, as Mary said, they were so overwhelmed with just keeping their children in school, in classes, and so it was a big 180 for us. We turned it all around.
Sure.
And of course, that comes with a lot of challenges. People aren't used to those changes, but we work with them. Part of my role is just to be at every Mass all weekend. We have 5 Masses. I'm at all of them, and I try to engage with all the families who are there.
Yeah.
When a family comes in, hi, how are you doing? We have a children's resource called the Magnificat, which we give to our younger children, and it's a resource for the month, and it's a children's guide to the Mass. The whole Mass is there, and the kids love it. The kids really, really do. When I have chance, I take them we have a cry room. I take a group of 4 or 5 into the cry room, and I do a teaching Mass. I stand on that side and tell them all about what Father David is doing on the altar, and they can ask questions. So it's worked well for us.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot there, and thank you for sharing, Betty. So I think a lot of what you shared points to how if you try to engage families even during this time and really centered on the Mass, and how can parishes even with the obligation is in place, and so we want people coming back to mass. But if individuals are, facing, especially right now, a rise in COVID and are ill,
Right.
how can we still make the liturgy available to them and engage them through it?
Right.
Benny, you've talked about making some changes, and you've talked about, you canceled, I'm assuming, those small groups for the past 2 weeks. Can you just speak briefly to what was your decision-making process when you went to cancel? Who do you include in that conversation, and how do you communicate it out?
Oh, absolutely. It's we have a parish leadership team, and at that point, it was a discussion of just bringing it to their knowledge that the attendance was low, fewer children were attending, and I just came to them with that, and I said, and the pastor was like, the numbers in Dartmouth are really growing. And we decided as a group that the best thing to do is to, just shut down for 2 weeks, see where this goes, and leave it open-ended. We'll see what's happening around the 20th, the 21st. And if the need comes for us to still be in a shutdown because of numbers, then we will do so. We take this on a weekly basis. And because the only groups that gather in person are our middle and our high schoolers, it's a little bit easier. Our younger children are Mass and the Kid Club, which is that resource that we have for them online. So for them, we just tell parents to use their best judgment in bringing and how they feel safe, bringing the children to church or to just meet us online. But it is a group decision because in some way it affects everybody. Now member care might have to reach out to some families who are maybe having difficult situations. Someone's sick, maybe it's a mom or a dad. And so there's a lot of roles in making those types of decisions.
Mm-hmm. Great. How about yourself, Pat? How have you how have you made your decisions? Who have you included, and how have you communicated them out?
Sure. The week before Christmas is when the Omicron was starting. You could start seeing the numbers going up. So Father Mike asked me to reach out to all the teachers because we had classes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night. So I reached out to all of them and said, "Are you comfortable teaching?" Now, I thought some would say no. They, across the board, said, "No, we want to come in." So we held classes. Again, it's so hard to know what the right thing to do is, but our feeling was if the teachers are comfortable, the parents already know. If you're not comfortable, don't come in, make up the work, at home. And then when you are comfortable, come in and so forth. So we went right up to Christmas and we had good attendance. And then we sort of did the same thing when we came back. It's like you reach out and say, "Are you comfortable?" And they were. But it was Wednesday, the last Wednesday night is when I realized I just knew, in your heart, you just know that it's not working and you just don't want to take that next step. So at that point, we had heard enough from parents and a couple of catechists who had their child was exposed. And I didn't make a phone call at that point. We basically said, and the numbers were so high last week. And we have the benefit, we have a school here. So we see the students here at the school. Now, attendance was low last week, but they're still here and they're happy and I see them every day. So, I don't know, but we just knew in our heart it was time to just shut down for a week and a half. And we felt like that was, if we have to do that, that's fine. And they'll make up the work. Like Benny said, we're taking this sort of week by week too, which is great because you have to, but it's also stressful because you don't know what the end is going to look like. And I'm like a person that needs to know what the end looks like. I'm just a planner. So it's always having a backup plan and so forth. But in terms of talking and touching base, I usually first go to the catechist. Like you said, you can't run a program if you have no catechists or subs, and see what their feeling is. And then you go and touch base with the parents. Like we've done surveys with them. Like last summer, I sent out a survey to the parents saying, are you comfortable coming back to class? And, are you willing to teach and all of that? And, they respond, and it was obvious based on that survey that we had parents that wanted their child back in class. And that was the driving force for us to offer in person, because we did a remote program last year that was pretty successful. We could have done it again this year, but we saw the parents wanted in person. So, if you have the teachers, you have the parents, you got to go for it. So that's what we did.
I mean, I think it's a great insight, Pat, because and we learned so much from last year, the craving for community, the craving for in person. Even with liturgy, as much as watching Mass it is helpful for your faith life, it's not the same as attending in person, both from an experiential point and even just a sacramental point of being able to receive the Eucharist. So obviously our goal is always to be in person and to always strive for in person. Things come up, such as the past 2 weeks that present a challenge. So, I appreciate both sharing that insight of, if a parish doesn't already have a plan or a process in place where you have a ready communication with your pastor and your parish leadership team, to consider who are the stakeholders that we need to keep in communication. Obviously, number one, your pastor, and that no decision should be made without your pastor approving it, but also who are other people who have great insight. Like Benny shared, your member care member, which is great, someone to collaborate with. Pat, the school that you have there at St. Mary's as well, and the principal, who I know also does confirmation for you. So just having those lines of communication. Also, if even if you can't do a large communication blast out to your parents, for one reason or another, it's not practical, who are those kind of key families or parents that you just have the relationship to, that you can reach out and get a sample size of taking the temperature of the room? The catechists are your volunteers or small group leaders. Just having almost a sample size you can always turn to, and then just having a clear way to communicate it out. And I would say,